Welcome back to our August podcast series here on Push to Be More. My name is Matt Edmondson. I'm the host of Push to Be More, and beside me is, well, the just all-round good egg, which is Sadaf Bainon, who is the producer of Push to Be More. Sadaf, how are we doing?
We are doing really well. Hi, Matt.
Very good. That's important. Apparently you've had a chilled weekend.
I have had a chilled weekend.
Which is nice. It's nice. It's a Monday is the time of recording this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And if you've been following the other three, you will know that we are doing something slightly different in August. We're sort of chatting about the podcast a little bit in some shorter episodes, just because we know August is one of those months where everybody's kind of on holiday, including us. And so we thought we'd do some quick, easy episodes to make life a little bit easier for ourselves. And so that's what we're doing. We are recording them. We've got 3 done. We are now on to week number 4 in August. So if you're listening to this on the podcast in August, I hope your August is going well and your summer is, sunny, because I just can't predict the future weather at the moment. So I have no idea what the weather's going to be. I can tell you here in the UK in July at the time of recording, it is pants. So, that's the way it is. And so, Sadaf, we're going to record 2 episodes today, aren't we? We're going to record this one and next week's. Just full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, we don't hold anything back. And this is your final week in Canada. Next week, you return to the really rubbish weather here in the UK. I hope you're ready.
I think I'm getting prepared. Today is the first day that I've woken up to rain.
Okay.
Here. So, yeah. I'm preparing.
Do I have any sympathy? Yeah, no.
No.
No. I really don't. Well, let's get into it. What are we talking about today, Mrs. Bainon? What's going on, Miss Producer?
All right.
Do the producing thing. Come on, let's see where we go.
All right. So today we're focusing on the opportunities that the podcasting has brought for us. Mm-hmm. So, I think we've had some amazing opportunities. One that comes to mind is SubSummit that you got to know of and got to attend through your contact with Chris George, who was on this podcast as well.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you would want to talk about that, Matt, maybe share a bit of that story.
Yeah, sure. Love to talk about it, because we're on a podcast where I have to talk, which is always wonderful. No, you're right. Chris came onto the podcast. He actually came onto EP as well, didn't he? He came onto the e-commerce podcast. And if you're new to Push to Be More, by the way, e-commerce podcast is my other podcast that I do. I do this one, Push to Be More, and we do one called e-commerce podcast, which is all about e-commerce. And there's often quite a bit of overlap between the two in terms of guests, because it's very easy. And Chris is one of those guys who came on both, right? So he was on both EP and Push. And if you listen to the e-commerce podcast episode, Chris is like, dude, you should come to SubSummit and record some live podcasts. And I was like, okay. And then after the conversation, after we, stop the recording and the conversation sort of carries on, he said, no, I was really serious about that, because I just thought, it's just one of those things that people say in an interview. And so we talked about that. And I said to Chris, Chris, you should really come on to Push. And I was telling him about the Push podcast. And so he came onto the Push podcast. I had a great time. He was super vulnerable, opened up, just real generous with his life, what he discovered and where he sees the future going and all that sort of stuff. It was a real beautiful conversation. I loved it. And after that conversation, Chris is like, you definitely need to come over. And so, I got invited to go over to SubSummit, which was in Dallas, Texas, and will be in Dallas, Texas next year as well, I think. And the conference was all about subscription-based businesses, which is, if you're in e-commerce, makes a lot of sense. It's like, the beauty box type thing where you pay your $20 a month and you get your beauty, or coffee, a lot of subscription businesses there. That's obviously not all of them, because there were thousands of people at the event, from Netflix, which is a subscription business, all the way down to Jean, who had just started selling handkerchiefs in the post for a fixed fee or whatever. And so it was a phenomenal conference. I have to be honest with you. Really loved it. In fact, on EP next month in September, we've got like a whole bunch of people that I met at the conference coming onto that podcast. I met a bunch of people that have been on my podcast that I'd never met in person. They were also at SubSummit. and John Raymond, Chase Clymer, just a few names to mention. Chris himself, Chris George was there. And so I got to meet all of these amazing people that I'd kind of known a little bit through the podcasting world. Chase Clymer is coming on to Pod Junction, isn't he? You've been talking to Chase about getting him, so I met him there. I was talking to him about Pod Junction and what we do at Orient Media, and so he's like, wow, because he does something really similar with his podcast. He uses his podcast to grow his business. So in terms of opportunities created, SubSummit was massive for me in terms of who I met. So not only did I get to do a live podcast at that event, which was super cool, by the way, because I'd never done a live podcast before. What I mean by that is we recorded the podcast in front of a studio audience, which made me feel like, I don't know if you remember, Sadaf, because, maybe it's just me and it's an age thing. When we had those TV shows, and they always used to say at the start, recorded before a live studio audience. Do you know what I mean? It's like Friends was a classic one, wasn't it? It was recorded before a live studio audience. Well, that was my first episode of a podcast ever recorded before a live studio audience, and we're going to premiere it on EP in September. That premiere sounds really posh, doesn't it? It's just, I'm going to premiere that episode.
Sure does.
Because that says we're just so posh.
We're so posh.
And yeah, it's great. And so I did that live podcast recording, which in itself was great, but also the people that I met was extraordinary. And the connections I made at that were extraordinary. They all came about because of a podcast, right? So the opportunity was created because Chris wanted to come on to EP. He applied to come on to the show. And he came on. We had a great time, a great conversation, and we just hit it off. And just one chance comment led to something else, and that opportunity was created. So yeah, I went and spent a week in Dallas, hung out with some friends in Dallas. Great excuse to go hang out with some friends. But that was when I did this crazy trip where I met a whole bunch of people. So SubSummit kicked it off. I went and met with Brett Curry in Austin, Texas, he's such a legend, that guy. And I went up to up to Astoria, Oregon to hang out with some people there. Bayman Zachary, who owns the Goonies house. Have we talked about this on this? I forget when we talked about these stories. We haven't. So I met the guy that owns the Goonies house. If you're of a certain age, you'll know what the Goonies is, the movie from the 80s, which is just an amazing movie. I met him on that trip, and I'll talk more about that in that episode. So listen out on Push to Be More, because Bayman's coming on soon. And an amazing story. What a great guy he was. Met him up in Oregon, went down to California, where I met up with Jared Mitchell. I think I mentioned that in the previous episode. Met up with Peter Awad, who's a friend of Jared's, in that previous episode as well. So we met him up in California. Went over to Kansas, did a bit of business in Cali, where I met Andrew Morgans, who has also been on the EP podcast. And then I went over to North Carolina to hang out with some friends, but also I met up with Colby Flirt, who has also been on the e-commerce podcast. So you talk about opportunities. I mean, I went all over just meeting podcast guests. It was unbelievable how cool that was to be able to do that. And so, yeah, that was, that all came about just because I had the podcast. If I wasn't doing the podcast, that trip never would have happened. And I wouldn't have the stories that I've got now. And I never would have been in the Goonies house. So,
that's right.
The Goonies were anyway. I could wax lyrical about the Goonies house, but was that
a bucket list moment for you, Matt?
Oh, it was unbelievable. Yeah, totally. I felt like I was dreaming the whole weekend, and there was a bit of a Goonies fest going on, hanging out with some great people, and getting to do some really cool Goonies stuff, which was just brilliant. And then having Bayman come on the podcast, meeting him, getting on super well, him coming onto the podcast, telling his story. We've recorded that episode already, but because we've got quite a busy schedule, haven't we? It's quite crammed. I don't know when that episode's coming out, but you really want to be subscribed to the show, because that is it's going to be a great episode. I know it is, because I've already recorded it.
Yeah, so without a doubt, podcasting has opened up some great opportunities for conversations and unexpected. You ended up in Dallas and got to meet so many people and reconnect with people. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you'd want to share?
From an opportunity point of view?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I met up with a lot of people in the States, a lot of American people who have been on the show, or who hadn't been on the show, but you take people like Amelia Kuhn, who's I've recorded the podcast episode with her. I connected with her on LinkedIn and said, hey, Amelia, I'm coming over to the show, right? I am bringing my microphone to record some podcasts. Do you fancy hooking up, right? So all the speakers at the show, brilliant actually, all the speakers at the show, I just was like, listen, would love to connect with you while I'm there, love to connect with you while I'm there. And we recorded an episode whilst I was there, but it just didn't feel great. It felt great in front of a live audience. How we did it beyond that, it just didn't feel great. And so I just met up with people, did the initial, what we call the pre-call, the sort of the chat. And then arranged to do the interviews with them when we got back. So we did that. I've done one with Amelia, I've done one with Vinod, and these guys are mainly e-commerce podcast guys. A few are going to come on Push. But it was really interesting that I could go to this event. So not only was I invited to go to this event and to do some live podcasting and stuff while I was over there, but because I was going, I could reach out to everybody and say, listen, I have a podcast, would love to connect. Just that phrase by itself, I have a podcast, I would love to connect, opens so many doors. In other words, I'm not going to try and connect with you and sell you my stuff, right? Which is, they get 100 requests, all the speakers going, we would love to connect. And I was in the speakers lounge. I know what those requests were like. People just wanting you to flog their stuff. Can we talk to you so I can sell you my boxes? And it's all that kind of stuff, right? But just the very act of just saying to them, listen, I've got a podcast, would love to have you on the show. Please think about it, would love to connect, even if it's just for a coffee. What do you think? And I got so many positive responses. It was unbelievable, really. And it took me 20 minutes, literally copy and paste every speaker, just posted that and sent them the same message, connected with them on LinkedIn, sent them the same message. So we've got Neil Hoyne coming on the e-commerce podcast. He's a chief strategist from Google. Never would have met him. Do you see what I mean? So, so the podcast led to an opportunity to speak at an event. But because I had the podcast, that gave me open doors to speak to a whole bunch of other people at the event. And so whilst it's all pretty much connected, it's incredible what the opportunities are just by saying I have a podcast. I know we're going to talk about this in the next interview, in the next conversation, aren't we? Great conversation, and we can talk about Andrew Kelly and that. But just that one thing and that cascading effect on all those other things, and using the podcast as an excuse, I thought was fantastic. So yeah, there's some great opportunities to be had in podcasting.
Everyone should have one.
Well, yes. Not everyone. No, I don't think it's for everyone. But I do think it can be done by most people. And I think most people can do it. And again, this is bringing this back to Podjunction, isn't it? The stuff that we found, the simple things like sending a message on LinkedIn saying, I've got a show, would you like to connect? Just talking about those kind of simple strategies, which is Chase Clymer, bringing Chase Clymer back into it. He's coming on to Podjunction to talk about his strategies, which is similar to what we do at Orion Media, if I'm honest with you. He does it with his agency, has grown his agency. Colby Flood. Can I mention Colby? I don't even know if I'm supposed to mention Colby because I've not even asked him if I can, but I'm going to because Colby is such a cool bloke, right? So Colby, I met him in North Carolina. He'd been on the show onto the e-commerce podcast. And he owns an agency in North Carolina which specializes in paid media, like Facebook ads. Really awesome guy. And again, if you're looking for a Facebook agency, do check out Colby Flood. I think his company's called Brighter Clicks. But right. Colby Flood, you'll find him on LinkedIn. What a legend. So he sends me a message over the weekend. I've not told you this, have I? He sent me a message over the weekend. And I'm just trying to pull it up now. Yeah, Brighter Clicks, that's his company name. So in episode 1 of the August episodes, I don't know what actual episode number that is, but the first one we talked about this guy, didn't we? That you can go to the website, Orion Media, and there's something on there which talks about how you can use a podcast to attract high-value clients. There's a webinar that we do, and associated with that webinar is a free download, right, that you can download, and it will walk you through the steps of connecting with people and just some of the scripts that we use and some of the ideas. So Colby, who already has his own podcast, right? He does it all. We don't do anything for him, but he's such a legend. He sent me an email saying, Matt, we've started doing cold email outreach for podcast guests and seeing great tracking in the initial send outs. We've already booked 4 new guests to speak with and have 3 additional pre-interview calls all lined up.
That's
I was
fantastic.
so stoked for that, man.
That
I was
is so cool.
stoked. Yeah. So all of that, it's great, isn't it? And we'll get Colby onto PodJunction telling us what he did, right? Because it's so cool. And so I gave him the guide. I actually gave him the guide because I wanted to know what he thought about it long before it went public. And because he had a podcast, and I just really like Colby, to be fair. And so, this is what PodJunction's all about. This is what we're going to be talking about, some of these things, some of these strategies. But you can get that now, actually. You can get that guide. So if you are interested in that, head over to aurionmedia.com, aurionmedia.com, and just download that free guide and give it a try yourself. So you don't even need a podcast to start. I know Colby has one. You don't, try it out. Send me the emails. Let me know how you get on, because there are some great opportunities. Does that make sense? I think I probably talked quite a bit on this episode. You've been quite quiet. You're all right.
Still waking up here. No kidding.
It's like almost dinner time here, and it's morning for you. Such as time zones.
No, it's definitely really cool the way that podcasting can open up so many doors. Yeah,
it is. Well, should we wrap that one up? Because I feel like we'll just keep going and going and going, and we're trying to keep these ones a bit shorter, aren't we, in August? So we're going to wrap up today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you get a bit excited about some of the things that you can do with podcasting, some of the opportunities that are out there. And as I said, do try that guide. So that's a wrap, isn't it, Mrs. Bain, on another August conversation. So for all you change makers out there contemplating podcasting as a marketing tool, do check out the website, aurionmedia.com. And remember to keep pushing to be more. Don't forget, you're awesome, created awesome, Sadaf's awesome, I'm awesome, created awesome. It's just a burden we have to bear. You've got to bear it as well. So I think that's a wrap. We're going to stop recording now and then probably instantly hit the record button to record the next one. But it's probably going to be a week between you hearing our voices. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. We will see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.